Hi everyone, this is Jim. Welcome to this Blitz chess postmortem. This is a postmortem of my Blitz game number 218. I was black here. My opponent played c4, the English opening. But we don't actually stay on the English opening. This turns into a transposition into a different opening after a few moves. So let's check out how it happened. Knight f6, knight f3. These are all pretty normal moves. And now I go for a Fianchetto setup. One way to play against the English. And he could stay with a symmetrical line by playing g3, or he could play d4 here, grabbing more center and being more of a traditional queen's pawn kind of opening, which is sort of what happens in the game. But he goes knight c3, which could, it's sort of a non-committal move in that sense. He hasn't committed to the pawn structure in the center. So we could still stay in English territory, or we can transpose into another line. So I go bishop g7. And now he goes e4, grabbing more space in the center, and we start to get into a situation where we're transposing into a different opening. In fact, after d6, and he plays d4, at this point we're in a King's Indian. So I castle, the normal move, and right here, White can continue with the classical King's Indian by playing bishop e2. But instead of playing that, he played g3. Which is another move. It's a little bit rare at this point because normally when you play g3, it's played a few moves earlier. So we're at a point in the opening book where there's only a few games that have gone this particular route. But you'll see after a move or two, we get into another mainline position after e5 and castles. Yeah, we've gone from a position that had two games to a position that had 600 games, over 600 games in the opening book. So this is actually the main line, or a main line, of the Fianchetto variation of the King's Indian defense. So just transposed into it by a slightly different move order. And now at this point, Black has a choice of different ways to play, including the move I played, just taking the pawn in the center, or c6, just trying to hold on to the center, and preparing maybe d5 in the future. Other ways to play, a6, rook e8, all these make sense. But taking has some appeal. It creates some squares here that I may be able to place my pieces on. Mainly, I'm talking about e5 and c5 are good squares for my knights. And it creates a hole here in his position on d4, which he's going to occupy with a piece. But whatever sits on d4 is potentially a target at some point to this bishop on g7. So my idea here was to play knight c5, and so I wanted to prepare it. I didn't want it to be chased immediately by b4. So I played the move a5. It looks like the main move here is rook e8. Okay, so just going after the center pawn, which I eventually decide to focus on the center pawn. Actually, that's the motivation of knight c5 too, is just to put more pressure on the e-pawn. And if you can force White to make a weakening pawn move like f3, that'll open up this diagonal towards his king, and so that's a concession on White's part. So that's one motivation for attacking this pawn. It's not like you really expect to be able to win it, but maybe you can force some concessions on White's part. Okay, so I went about it by playing a5. It looks like I could have just played knight c5 right away, and if he plays b4, I can just go with the knight to e6, and it looks like this is fine for Black. So I didn't really need to worry so much about that move b4, although it does release the pressure on the e-pawn, but in exchange you get more pressure on the d4 square, so probably a decent trade for Black to switch his focus from e4 to d4. But I was staying with the idea of going after the e-pawn, and so I played the move a5 to prepare knight c4. He went h3 and knight c5, I mean. So I play knight c5, and now finally with bishop e3 we leave the opening book for good. So let's go ahead and look at the game. You also see we're in a position where White has a lot of choices here, and they all leave White and Black about equal. So this is a position with chances for both sides. So bishop e3, rook e8, logically continuing to attack the e-pawn. Queen c2 defending, so he had only two defenders. He needed to bring a third defender in because I have three attackers. And now bishop d7 was played. It looks like queen e7 continuing to pile up on the e-pawn was maybe a better alternative. And also c6. Yeah, I thought a bit about c6. but I wasn't sure I wanted to play it just yet. It's you know, a move you have to be careful with because it does weaken the d6 pawn, so you want to be sure you play it at the right time. So I throw in bishop e7, and I already had the idea of targeting the h3 pawn. So he went rook a, c8. Still okay, maybe not the best move. Looks like rook f e1 is the best move here, but anyway, still staying in the range of equality. And then I play queen to c8, threatening on h3, and he completely missed this. So my opponent makes a couple of mistakes in the next few moves, and it's kind of game over after that. So it's interesting how quickly it goes. So knight d to b5 ignores the threat to h3, and I take. And now here's the second critical point. You see, if he handles this right, he can maintain a situation where black has the edge, but due to the extra pawn, but white has some compensation. So he doesn't have to get into as much trouble as he got in the game. And the way to play it is to take over here. So I take back. And then rook c to d1, just putting rook on the open file, and force me to grab this bishop. And you'll see that compared to the game, I'm not able to play the move queen h3. So this helps actually secure his king side. So white's a pawn down here, but he's not losing the game. In fact, this is you know, near to even, or you know, this is in the range of a typical opening advantage. So you know, he can certainly play on here with hopes to even turn the tables and win the game later. So that's the way to proceed and put up the toughest fight. Instead, he just took the bishop, and so this is really a big mistake because he's inviting the queen into his own camp by doing that exchange. So classic case of where to take is a mistake. You know, you're helping your opponent when you do an exchange like that and bring your opponent's pieces forward. So so now knight to g4 is a serious threat. Knight g4, queen h2 is checkmate. So he really needs to do something about that. The engine is recommending, well, first taking on c5. I wonder if bishop takes c5, could I just play knight g4 anyway? Well, now he has f3. Okay, and then I take the bishop, and he can take the knight. So what does that leave us? Leaves me with the rook. So actually I've sacked a piece on that line, but I have a pretty interesting attack here, actually. c6. How about queen takes g3 check? Well, that is a move, but it leaves white with an advantage. Okay, yeah, you have to play very carefully when you're down a whole piece. So I probably would not have played that. Yeah, so the problem is after bishop takes, I really need to take back. And then that gives him some time. Knight d5. Now knight g4 and f3. Gives him some time to organize a defense. I thought queen to here, check would be good at this point. Well, it is good. It's just not so great. Takes, and then c6. Oh, okay. So my knight is hanging, but I can play c6 and attack his knights. So, okay, an interesting game. That would have been a way to play. This maybe is the third mistake then. The knight takes c7. He's playing an attacking move, and there is a second old saying, the best defense is a good offense, but you have to make sure that your offense is strong enough to really deter your opponent. And this threat here, after knight takes c7, he's just threatening to win the exchange. And I have a much bigger threat here when I bring my knight in. I'm threatening to checkmate, so he really needs to deal with that. Rook f to e1, if you leave the engine to think about it long enough, it turns out that is not a very effective defense. I can show you. You can see already the score is getting worse. So basically, black is winning no matter what white does. I just wanted to show that after rook f e1, bishop takes c3, going ahead and getting rid of this defender over here. And if he takes back, well, okay, he can take the b takes c3 or knight takes e8. Okay, let's say he takes the bishop first. Queen h2 check, king here is only move, and knight takes e4. Bringing another knight in and adding pressure to f2, and this looks pretty devastating. If knight takes a8, just grabbing the rook, then rook e6. Rook e6. Rook e6 is a strong move here. That is an unusual move. I have no idea what rook e6 is accomplishing. Rook e5 I can understand, bringing the rook over. maybe to threaten mate. What is rook e6? Rook e6, a3 or a4, or knight c7. How about knight c7 hitting the rook? Now knight takes g3 check. Oh, okay, that's a nice trick. Knight takes g3 check, f takes g3, and queen h1 check. And now bishop g1 defending. So if the king goes to e2, rook takes e3 as mate. So that's one idea of this, keeping the rook on the e file. But yeah, I still don't understand why rook e6 did anything. Maybe it's just kind of a waiting move, forcing white to do something. If we back up for just a second, before rook e6 was played, why not play knight takes here, check immediately? F takes, queen h1 check, bishop g1, and rook e3. I guess what's different is that a rook move is forced here. When the rook is on e6, it's defended by a pawn, whereas when it sits here, it's undefended. So I have to do something about the rook at this point. So it kind of slows down my attack to make a rook move here. Rook to e3, where it's defended by the knight, and then there's an exchange. That's very interesting. So in this position, rook e6 is the strongest move. Very, very strange. Okay, yeah, chess is a funny game sometimes. Okay, so let's go back to what was played. I went knight g4. My opponent played f4. And yeah, we were just looking at that rook e1 line. So, but if you look at the chess engine, f3 and f4 and rook fe1 are all about equal, but they all lose. But yeah, the idea with the f-pawn move, I would have played f3 myself, hitting the knight. Maybe it's a little more forceful, but he played f4. And now, either way, I could have played the same move. As I can just take this bishop, and so I'm winning a piece, and I'm also going to win the exchange. And he could win the exchange too, but that will leave me a piece up, and that's how it happens in the game. Looks like queen h2, the move he played, is the best move here. Top choice of the engine. So, but I can just take the queens off, and then this rook goes with check. He gets it back, so he gets the piece back, so he's lost the exchange. And now it's my move. I just played rook a c1 to force the issue with this knight. So he takes the exchange, and now I'm just a piece up. And after surveying the position for a few seconds, there's basically no compensation for white. So my opponent resigned here. That's how it ended. So I hope you guys enjoyed that. Leave any comments you have in the section below, and I will see you again soon. Bye.